So we started with a water district. It's a wholesale water district that allows us to enter into IGAs and bring water to it. We can only serve other districts and municipalities. But one of the things we're finding is that there's a regional issue. So we agreed not just to serve our development, but our neighbors who are on wells going dry. And tap fees, the way we've always built our state is new development pays for it through impact and tap fees. You never thought you'd heard a landowner say that, but it's true. We'll generate about $300 and some million worth of tap fees to build infrastructure. The one thing we're not a private water company. That's not our business. We've agreed not to profit off the water. So how do you build a system? Well, number one, you focus obsessed with demand reduction. That's why we have people like Beorn, leads our water team or skunk works, whatever you want to call it, but they're the people that really make it happen, because an idea without execution is kind of a waste of time. We want to develop multiple water sources and options. We believe in conjunctive use on the Front Range, the idea of using the deep aquifer for drought years and using renewable water in other times. We focused on reducing consumption, but we have to maintain a Colorado lifestyle. It isn't Arizona and it isn't Nevada, it's Colorado. And so we need plants and a lifestyle and elegance to reflect that. We also, one of the biggest challenges I believe we have in our state is the balkanization of our water systems. I forget how many dozen districts we have for Douglas County alone. So we have to partner. We have to get our mindset of what's mine is mine and yours is negotiable, and start working on the idea of creating partnerships and authorities around. But you have to be self-reliant. So we rolled this in after many years of work. We rolled this after 6 years of hearings, to put it in perspective. We put it into our land plan. The idea of the water conservation with reduced standards. When we start extra security, we'll start at about a 0.4 acre feet per home, but we're going to go to about a 0.22. That's what we're building towards. And a methodology, one of the key things at Douglas County, which took a lot of elected official courage, is we have a look-back system. The more we conserve, the less water we have to have. So it actually reduces the cost to our residents. It's a 5 years, it's an algorithm about that long, but when you run it, it gives us 2 standard deviation security for our residents. We also, as I mentioned earlier, believe in a conjunctive use, and we're sharing water with our neighbors. I want to talk for just a minute about demand management versus conservation. One of the things I've learned is conservation is number one, vitally important, but also it's easy to say. We have a tremendous education issue facing us. I have to admire Denver Water with their Grass is Dumb ads. It's been tremendously successful and got people thinking about it. But conservation only works if you have too much to start with. If you have a legacy system, you have too much. You have to conserve. If you have a new system, there's no reason that we should be having any new building permits issued that don't involve demand reduction. The World War II housing stock in the Front Ranges and in the West Slope is wearing out. Why are we rebuilding those homes on a 3/4 inch tap? We need to find a way, and it's going to take significant political leadership, not meaning to put the burden on my friends from the state, but why are we continuing to build homes without demand reduction in it? And we need to ask ourselves that question and not make it so rigid it becomes prohibitive, but to start building these concepts into new homes while we work on conservation with existing homes. To say new homes are going to conserve in a new conservation development feels good and gets you through zoning commissions, but it doesn't accomplish what you need to be. We need to find ways of bringing demand reduction into every new home that's built. That's how you get results like they have in Nevada. Let me turn this over to Beorn to walk through exactly how we did it in our land plan, and I'll come back in a minute.
Get this down here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us again to be here. It's exciting we get a lot of opportunity to tell this story on the East Slope, and it's exciting to get to be in front of a new audience. One thing that I want to say, just to put into perspective what makes this project special and different and why we've had some of the opportunities we've had, is that, as Harold explained, the project is in a location in Douglas County that had no water provider. So not only is the ownership team, which is just a local family, Harold, Diane, and Diane's brother, not only were they developing the land, but they had to become the water provider. So early on, they were looking at things from both sides, both in terms of what can we do with this piece of land, and also in how are we going to do it. And so I think that gives them a much different, unique perspective compared to if you could just come in where there's already another water provider and just be a developer. The other thing that's really unique, and I'll circle back to this, but early on in the project, they became very dedicated to the concept of rainwater harvesting. And so we went on tours and looked all over the kind of semi-arid and arid Southwest, and we looked at projects that were using rainwater harvesting. And when Harold first came to us and said, I want to do rainwater harvesting, we said, well, you know it's illegal. And he said, I don't care if it's illegal. I've toured a bunch of these projects, and I've seen that it makes sense, and come with me. So he took us on tours and kind of got us addicted to the concept with him. But what we learned as we were looking at all of those projects that had rainwater harvesting, they also had something else, and that was they were using a lot less water for landscape than a traditional home would use. And so that became, the demand management and the rainwater harvesting concepts became very fundamental early on to the water plan. The third piece, I would say, was a commitment to not develop entirely on groundwater, which was feasible for this project in Douglas County. That's how the rest of projects got started in Douglas County. But early on, the ownership team decided they were going to do things different, and they were going to go out and get renewable water. Well, renewable water is really hard to come by in this location, and it's a lot more expensive. So it also made sense from that aspect to find a way to use less water. So what we have here is, on the right is kind of the outline of Sterling Ranch. It's 3,400 acres. And what's being planned there is a little over 12,000 residential units and some mixed use schools, some commercial, and sports fields. And something that was very exciting and special and different with this project is that oftentimes the water resources people don't get to be part of the very early on planning of the project. But this one was different with the owner's appreciation of water and kind of history with water in the West. They brought me and the water team to the table with the planners from the very beginning. And so as the planner was starting to, see if I can do this, to kind of sketch out what made sense for the development, for instance, right down the center of the development, what you're seeing, all of the colored areas are open spaces. And there's over 30% of the development is being left as open spaces. But down the center of the development is a regional park. And that's a program park that's going to be very active. I don't want to compare it exactly to something like Wash Park in Denver, but it's going to have a lot of activities going on. There were other areas of the site that made sense. This is Willow Creek. And so it made sense to leave those more open. And they wanted to bring a connection of trails throughout the site. And so as these concepts were starting to unfold, at every step we were looking at what's the water demand and what's the opportunity to work in some demand management. If you look on the left, this is a neighborhood scale concept. And again, this is Willow Creek. So here we're looking at this corner over on the left. Well, one of the concepts that we implemented is that if we're really going to take this to a higher level of demand management and have significantly less outdoor use on individual residential lots, people still have to have a place to go. People still have to have a place to recreate. And so there are pocket parks built in, and that's what these are, pocket parks built in to every neighborhood. So you're only ever walking a couple blocks to get to more open space. And those are the areas where we'll use more water. On the individual homes, we're going to be requiring and we are working with the builders to ensure that this works out, but we're requiring to build something more like this moderate conservation concept. So this is a depiction of milk jugs, and we like that because the impact of showing, dumping 25 milk jugs on your lawn over the summer kind of resonates more with people than when you just think about opening up the hose and letting it go. But when you look at what a traditional bluegrass lawn in the metro area would use, it's somewhere around 25 gallons per square foot. If you go to moderate conservation, which is probably not quite the level, well, not at all the level of what is going on in Nevada. But as you go to moderate conservation, that reduces the use down to somewhere around 16 or 17 gallons per square foot. And then we're certain you can push it even further. You can get it down to under 10 gallons per square foot. At this point in time, a business decision, and through working closely with builders, Sterling Ranch has decided to focus on what we're calling moderate conservation, around 17 gallons per square foot. And taking it a step further, here we are working, so started with the land plan, where we've focused where the irrigated areas and water use will be all the way down to the individual home level. So working with the planner and the builders' planners to create landscape concepts where we can ensure that these homes get built to use less water to begin with. And at the top, these are depictions of different lot sizes that we know that the builder is looking at using. And the green is irrigated grass, and the blue is plantings, and the red is non-irrigated area. So we're developing these landscape plans with water budgets associated with them where we know that the homeowner can meet their water budget. And they're going to have a really ballistic, is what Harold likes to call it, tiered rate system where it will be affordable to use enough water within your water budget, but as you get outside of that, it's going to become very punitive, and that's to send the message on the outdoor water use side that we're serious about the demand management. Taking it a step further, we're also working with the planner to give homeowners even yet another opportunity to show, typically when a home is first built and the resident moves in, the backyard is either not completed or it's just completed with the kind of cheapest, fastest bluegrass from fence to fence. What we're doing is working with concepts that show that if you implement more of the functional non-irrigated features such as patios, which there's a cost to those, and I'll show you that next, but if you do more of that up front, there's the upfront cost, but then it's going to come back over time in your water bill savings, and it's also going to give you a more interesting backyard. Harold will talk about the vegetable garden community ag concept, and we think that that's something people are going to be really interested in. So some of these were showing vegetable gardens, planter boxes in the backyard. So this is the kind of data that we're compiling and having really serious adult conversations with the builders and the homeowners about. As you go, we're going to be requiring the reduced water use in every home. But as you go from that, which we would require, to even a little bit more conservation or demand reduction, you can get anywhere from 4 to 23,000 gallons savings per year on average. But there is, like I said, a cost, and we're estimating somewhere between $2,400 up to $6,000. Reactions are kind of varied on that. Some homeowners will be interested in that and want to do that right up front. Others will probably take that and say, that's somewhere where I'm going to get to down the road, but I know that there is some return on that upfront investment in my landscaping, and there's going to be the return of being able to stay within my water budget, not go to those punitive levels. Okay, so back to rainwater harvesting. From the beginning of the project, and probably even before that, the management team was dedicated to rainwater harvesting. And in 2005, we started a study where we brought together representatives of all different interests. The River District was one. We had Denver, Aurora, some of the major municipalities. We had environmental groups, and we had the state engineer's office. And we were exploring, putting aside the current legal challenges, we were exploring what is the potential for rainwater harvesting, and is it something that we should be looking at closer into the future? And for a project like Sterling Ranch, currently that picture on the front of the slide, that's the ranch. There's nothing there. There's no impervious area there. There's no runoff. So for a project like that, we are going to be creating a lot of runoff, which we're going to have to deal with on the stormwater permitting side of things. But in generating all of that new runoff, is it something that we should be looking at more managing our resources on the site rather than just the traditional putting them back to the river? And the conclusion of the study, after a lot of exploring the different feasibility aspects of it and legal aspects of it, were that it is something we should be taking more seriously. It has proven water quality benefits. It allows you to manage your resources on site, reduced impacts of energy and other resources. And as long as you're not injuring existing water rights, and that's very important, but as long as you're not doing that, it's a viable concept. And so 2 bills were passed in 2009. One is pilot projects for new developments, which Sterling Ranch is the first and only project, and the other is for exempt wells. So not everybody is aware of that, but if there are users that are not able to connect to a central treated system and they have an exempt well, as long as their permit's the right type of permit, they can add a cistern. One of the things we had to dispel in this kind of conversation is a little odd to have today with all of the precip we're having on the Front Range, but when we got the group together, there really was a perception that there are periods of very little to no rainfall in times. And so we went back and looked at the historical record in the area of the project in Douglas County. And at the time of the study, it was ranging from 10.7 inches up to 28 inches. And the importance there is there was always precipitation every year. And even in the worst year on record there, it was 10 inches. And since then, we've had several years since then, and we're still falling within that. Douglas County hasn't had as much rain over the past week as other areas further north, but at Sterling Ranch, we have gotten 2.8 inches. And just to give you some perspective, when you see the cisterns that Harold will show, that would be enough to fill over 2,000 gallons at the ranch house at the demo site. So it's just another example of if we have the legal and physical means of capturing the water when it is in priority, because it's been a free river on the lower South Platte, it's a concept we need to look at more. Turn it back.
Thank you, Beorn. We found that rainwater harvesting is a reliable and sustainable method of obtaining a new non-traditional water supply and does not impact existing water rights, at least that's what we've shown today. Obviously, when you start a project like this, because remember, we're building a project for about over 30,000 people. You have to do it right. So you don't launch on these without first trying it. So we did a 3-year test. We partnered with the Denver Botanic Gardens on different planting types and also rainwater harvesting. And then we had 6 different irrigation companies come in and do their best. What different types of irrigation work? This gives you a schematic. We had a well which would represent a municipal water supply. We had storage. We captured the rainwater. We had 6 different zones, but 15 different gardens, trying out different types of plants, the criteria for the plants for the botanic gardens. And people don't realize that Denver Botanic Gardens for years has been covering steppe climates to find what plants work in this climate and can look good. And our criteria was they have to look good, they don't need much water, and if you have a dry year and you don't water them, they don't die. Nurserymen can grow them, and people like me can't kill them. And so we tried hundreds of different plants, and we found some that worked, some that didn't. This is a layout, actually, of the garden itself. It's an old farmhouse that we used for rainwater capture, and then we tried these different gardens. We had 6 different irrigation systems, drip irrigation, but we learned many things. For example, we're very excited about drip irrigation. We find it works beautifully for shrubs and that type of thing, but the controller systems available today, probably not conducive to individual home use. So we're backing away from that, going back to rotational. For example, we learned these things from the different vendors that brought them in. Our demonstration site results, where we had last year was a wonderful year for us, because while it was bad for everything else, it gave us what happens when you stress it. We had record heat. We had precip 40% below average. And even with that, using our Water Smart and the botanics gardens, they stressed but recovered. Now, we tried different types of grass as well. In our project, you have to have grass. That's part of Colorado. But think of it as a throw rug instead of a carpet, and different kinds of grasses. We tried some fescues and some thermal blues. We had very good results with the different grasses, depending on the use, all of which use a significant percentage less than the traditional Kentucky bluegrass. Now, we wound up, one of the biggest challenges we had when we started this project is you measure water needs in inches and sell it by the gallon. That's what we do. So we had to come up with some way of getting a common standard. So we used gallons per square foot. Bluegrass is about 25. We came across about 12.5 gallons per square foot, which was well below our water plan. We were very excited about that. Edible landscaping used the most at 20. Some of our outdoor gardens, like the one in the lower right, used about 3. So we found overall about 12.5. And we are encouraging edible landscaping, because a lot of ways, gardening is a new golf for people. The rainwater harvesting, last year, in that dry year, we had 14.9 inches, which is 85% of average. We still captured 9,600 gallons that we know of. We filled and spilled. And so it was far more efficient than anything the engineers had predicted it would do off that small roof. Even last year, in that dry year, it would have been at least a third of our outdoor demand. Remember, what's used in the home stays in the system. What's used outside is gone. Would have been at least a third of our outdoor irrigation, which is huge to us. One of the most important things is that 2/3 of the volume came during the irrigation system. We were concerned you'd get it all in the winter from snowmelt, then you don't have enough storage. But most of the water, and it's proving again this year, comes during the irrigation system, so you're filling in and pumping from your system. It's been very exciting for us. One of the things we've learned is the individual cistern concepts that we all have our heads around really is too expensive to work. We've been working around the state with regional systems. That one at the upper right is a system that a Colorado company, Concrete Concepts, developed, where those are box culverts that they configure in different ways. And we can get several million gallons of storage out of those things. They're structural, they're box culverts, so you can put them under a parking lot anywhere you want. And we're down all in somewhere around 60 cents a gallon or less, which is huge for storage. Now, it's expensive, of course, but when you figure what that would be replacing, and when you figure that by introducing or incorporating your rainwater harvesting with your stormwater, you have to have stormwater retention anyway. Just convert that into rainwater harvesting. The bulk of your storage costs are virtually paid for by what you would have had to spend in water, pure water quality issues. And as those standards ratchet down, we don't have water quality issues. We don't put it back in the stream. We put it back on the lawn. The very things we don't want our drinking water, nitrates and phosphates, the plant thinks are just great. And it also reduces the cost to our residents. The thing we have to remember, at the end of the day, having these things is great, but we have to have residents who it fits their lifestyle and they can afford it. Because sustainability that isn't sustainable economically is a fool's errand. And what we found with our water conservation, moving back from rainwater harvesting for a minute, our water demand management, forgive me, I misspoke, is that if you use half the water, you can charge twice as much and still get the same cost to your residents. People care about the cost of water, not the price of water. So how you manage that cost becomes key. So by reducing demand, you're reducing the cost and improving the quality of life of your residents. And people understand that. I think our residents are far ahead of a lot of us. They're ready for it. It's interesting, when someone asked a question about home builders. When we talk to the national home builders, and you may have noticed in the paper, we've sold our lots. We're done in terms of detached. The national home builders that are building in Arizona and Nevada and elsewhere, they look at us when you say we want you to do water smart, like, of course. Of course we were going to do water smart. The home builders and the consumers, in a lot of ways, are ahead of the market. They're ready to go. We just need to provide them the product. One of the things we found, these are our friendly coyotes. We set up cisterns throughout during 2012, and we found no water. We had motion detectors and that type of thing on our measurement system. We had no stormwater leave the property, and we could not detect any increase in groundwater. So we would have captured a third of our water supply without injuring any downstream rights. So to say we're excited about it, now that we've, only a fool starts a major project without getting test results. We've had 3 years of demonstration garden test results on our water conservation and that. It works. We're going forward. The beauty of this system is it's our risk. So if it doesn't work, that's my problem, not the community's. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to work and work well. So integrating the green infrastructure is what the EPA calls, my words, integration stormwater management and rainwater harvesting. It's a huge issue because utilities, the people who plan stormwater, are different than the people that supply the water, and oftentimes who process the waste are different. And the three of them don't talk to each other very much. And how you get those integrated is proving to be a very important challenge. But we've got to allow stormwater management to be interfaced directly with rainwater harvesting. And we find the Department of Health is on board. The Water Conservation Board has been wonderful. The EPA has been a cheerleader, but the systems and the regulatory structures are very different. We have a lot of work to do. Anybody has some ideas, we're wide open. The opportunities for integrating, again, you have to capture the stormwater anyway. Just line the ponds, turn it to your rainwater harvesting, augment the river for the damage that would have been done to downstream users. You've got to protect those people. The rest you put back on the lawn. It improves water quality, even from its native state. And you're converting expense to an asset. There's more to consider with green infrastructure. We've got to figure out how we integrate the two. We need to do a better job. We need to do a better job of measuring the benefits of stormwater management, which we can't do on a clockwork plant. We're going to have to take it full scale, which we are doing. And we also think we can find ways to actually improve water quality and do some credits training. The next step is full-scale development. We're going ahead. We have a few more years on our rainwater harvesting. We're prepared for an augmentation plan. I'll see you in court in the next 20, 30 years. We'll get that sorted out somehow. Not that you're going to be on the other side. I'm expecting most to be on our side, but there's always a few. We have to obtain an augmentation plan. We've been working with the state water engineers. It's been great to work with. I can't tell you the support we've had from DNR. Because everybody who looks down the road, we're hearing things are changing. If we don't change with it, we got a problem. And rainwater harvesting, this non-traditional water right, if we can get their metrics right, so we're protecting the downstream users, works, and we know it works. In fact, we used it in Colorado for a couple thousand years, worked just fine. We just need to go back to the future with some of that. Our recommendation for others. Yes, you can't, always taught me, I always ask for the order. New development in our state should incorporate demand management. You do the same thing in the same way, you're going to get the same results every time. So we would encourage, and we're very excited about our state water planning, that we should look at these things. One size doesn't fit all. Statewide dominance of how you do it is not, I don't think, the way to do it, but providing leadership to new housing should have demand management, even if it's slicking a house and building a new one, we think is vitally important. We need to understand, we need to be working as a state on integrating green infrastructure, meaning stormwater management, rainwater harvesting, and hopefully these can be incorporated into the plan. We're seeing the rainwater harvesting picking up. If you look at that picture here, that's Denver Water worked out an augmentation plan with urban drainage and how that was worked out to try on a school. That's external storage, which these polyethylene tanks seem to work well for external. We had a lot of problems with them in buried systems, but the concrete works, of course, very well. We're very excited about the future. We're building a community for 30,000 residents, probably half of which will be our children. We're building for that first and last home market. Last home market mine, main floor master, place where kids come home. First home market is the millennials coming on stream. That's a bigger market than was than my generation, the boomers. This is an exciting time for our state. We have to get ahead of the issues, and water is the most important issue, because as these home buyers and builders buy their homes, we need to be incorporating new ways of thinking in water management. We're honored to be here today, and thank you for your time and attention. To say our business, we're just a Colorado family building a new city, and we're excited about it, and are really very much looking forward to the future and working with you. And thank you for all the support of the River District.
Harold, will you take one question?
Sure.
We have one question out there pressing, right here. Joe.
Being someone from the lower South Platte, I'm hoping you're rainwater harvesting today. But my question, I guess, would be, in 2012, could you explain how you augmented your rainwater harvesting, in a dry year? And then I guess the second part of that is, Beorn mentioned renewable water supplies. What kind of renewable water supplies would you, I guess, obtain?
Our renewable water supply, we're huge believers in WISE. We think the whole concept of municipalities working together and governments working together to increase water supplies that otherwise would be lost makes sense. We're the only WISE user that's base loading off WISE and augmenting as opposed to using it as a supplemental supply. So we're a huge believer in WISE. We also own some other rights and prepared to get more, but we're casting our lot with the WISE system because we think that's the way of the future. We did not have to augment last year for two reasons. One, we had no discharge. There was nothing going to the river. But more importantly, there's two parts to the law. If you use an existing home on a well, you can capture the rainwater off the roof, and you don't have to augment that. So we use that for this test site. Now, how are we going to augment it in the future? We're developing the algorithms now. You saw the weather station. We're calibrating Doppler radar to rainfall, so we can project where water falls and how much, and developing the algorithms to turn that back to what would have made it to the river under historic conditions. And we will do that either from releases from reservoir, a permitted source, or from another source that we'll use to augment as part of an overall augmentation plan. Well, the science would say, the bench science would say, on average, in our part of, and it's location dependent, but in our part of Douglas County, only about 3% of the water gets to the river on average. High of 18, low of 0. So last year would have been a 0 year. That's what the bench science says. Now we're developing, as you saw, the records so we can prove exactly what does happen, and then we'll allocate that across as part of an augmentation plan. Did I miss anything?
Your water plan doesn't depend on the rainwater right now.
Oh,
Rainwater systems in your development?
say again?
Rainwater systems?
We're going to use them in our development. We are not going to put them into our water plan until they're through an augmentation. But we're going to start using them as part of our test program. Yes, sir. But we're not including them in our water supply planning until after it's been through the courts and augmentation plan. Does that answer your question? Did I? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Beorn. Thank you, Harold.